I was the fat kid. I was the kid that got picked last during PE. I was the kid that always felt like the odd one out. When we feel sorry for ourselves, we go to what's easiest. In my case, it was food. It was emotional eating. I was diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease. I was just like, why is life like this? Why does this keep happening to me? I looked at myself in the mirror as I got changed. I could not believe the reflection that was staring back at me, because how I felt and truly wanted to be as a person was the exact opposite of what was looking back at me in that mirror after all of this hard work that I'd put in, and I knew that I needed help.
You actually have to learn how to push yourself. You have to learn how to leverage the power of your decisions, and you've got to learn how to take action when you don't feel like it.
Welcome to the 1 in a Million podcast with me, your host, Millie Cvetkovic. This is your go-to destination for empowering conversations on mastering confidence in both body and mind. Hello guys, welcome to episode number 1 of the 1 in a Million podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Whilst you're here, I am going to ask you straight off the bat to please drop a rating. This is how it allows us to reach more people. So whether you're listening on Spotify, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please drop a rating below and let me know if you enjoyed this episode. And this episode is going to be a pretty vulnerable one because we're going to talk about how I went from being miserable, overweight, so unconfident that I genuinely thought I was destined to live a life where I would just never truly be happy, to now I've lost 50 pounds of stubborn body fat for good. I feel undeniably confident in my body and mind. I'm a successful woman that has now helped hundreds of other women to achieve exactly the same. They have transformed their bodies. They have finally got to a position where they've healed their relationships with food. And they are also about to start unlocking this next transformative chapter of their lives, because when you've got that undeniable confidence, it really is the key to true success in all domains of life, whether it's career, relationships, whether it is longevity and health. So I'm going to tell you how things started out for me. To be honest, I have to go all the way back to where I was quite young to give you some real context for where I came from. Because if you have only got to know me perhaps over the last couple of years, you probably see, okay, she, lives a happy lifestyle in Dubai. She's pretty confident within her body. And I can see that she puts out, educational content to help women. But it most definitely was not always that way. And my life didn't look so, lovely from the outside. My parents were Serbian immigrants in the UK. So they moved over in the early 90s, and in the late 90s, I was born. Now, my parents came over to England in pursuit of better opportunities for more work, but it didn't mean that they didn't struggle. So it meant that we didn't really have a huge amount, but my parents worked really hard and they definitely taught me hard work when I was young. However, something pretty, I suppose, unexpected for most people happened when I was relatively young. And around when I was 5 or 6 years old, my mother was diagnosed with a pretty severe mental illness, schizophrenia. And that's where things really started to take a turn in my life. It meant that growing up, I was never really in a safe environment, or at least things didn't feel safe. So at home, everything was pretty volatile depending on the state of health of my mum. My dad had to support and provide for 4 children, and it meant that he was not at home that much, which meant that as I was growing up, I was trying to support a mother who was very sick and then also look after my younger brother. And this is what I was dealing with from like the age of 6 or 7. There wasn't much in which I found comfort aside from, having my dad to be present when I was younger. So he was a very, very important figure in my life. And then also, naturally through our culture, Eastern European culture, a lot of what we celebrate, a lot of where we derive happiness from is from food. So that meant that I did find a lot of comfort in food. So without even realizing, as I grew up, I was a comfort eater. I had grown up knowing that in times of stress or in times of fear, what would I do? Well, I knew I would kind of just go to the sweets cupboard and grab some food and start eating, because it just felt like something that was at least some element of happiness and control in an environment where I was honestly really scared and worried. because the things that to anyone who's listening that knows, if you have a loved one that's got a severe mental illness, you'll know how unexpected and how just purely strange some of the experiences that you will go through are. And therefore you live in a state of like heightened anxiety and worry. And so I just knew that something that could downregulate or calm me as a kid was just, okay, I like food that tastes good. I like sweets. But naturally that meant that throughout my childhood, I put on quite a lot of body fat. I was the fat kid. I was the kid that got picked last during PE or any kind of sporting event. I was the kid that always felt like the odd one out in a girls group. You know, all the girls were dating, they had boyfriends, that was never me. So it's one of these things where I truly grew up not only in fear, not only seeking comfort in food, but then also not really getting to experience that kind of childhood that most people will reflect back on, where you are active. I hated being active because I grew up fat. I always thought that I wasn't able to do it, so I never was active. And that really took an even more intense turn when I was around the age of 11, where unfortunately at that stage, my mother, because she was so unwell, she took her own life. And then it meant that I was sprung into my teenage years with really barely any emotional support and this emotional eating problem. That perpetuated and got worse and worse throughout my teenage years until I went to university. Now, there's one thing that's really important for me to clarify at this point. It's that if you think that I have been fit and active my whole life, you are very, very mistaken. The first time that I set foot in the gym, I was 19 years old. So there's like 2/3, 3/4 of my life where I have never done any physical activity. In fact, avoided it like the absolute plague. So when it comes to talking sincerely from the perspective of someone that was not, quote unquote, genetically gifted or made to be an athletic person, I seriously mean it. Like, I started from scratch in the middle of my university degree. And there's a very important reason why I started. And this reason was another huge curveball in life that ultimately fueled my victim mentality. The mentality that, woe is me, like, why am I the kid that was born with a really sick and unwell parent? Why did I have to be the teenager that lost her mum? Why did I have to come from a poor family that isn't really well integrated into British society and culture and doesn't do half the stuff that other British people do because we come from somewhere else? Like, everything just felt really difficult. But it meant that, unfortunately, I spent a lot of my life, more than my life that I would have wanted to, feeling sorry for myself. And when we feel sorry for ourselves, we go to what's easiest. So we will find or build up addictions to certain things. In my case, it was food. It was emotional eating. Other people, you know, they might be addicted to smoking or vaping, pornography, all these different types of addictions that people will have because that short-term satisfaction that you're getting from something, you feel like it's an outlet for all of the negative emotions and things that you're experiencing or that you feel that life has put on you. And so my victim mentality got made even worse when in my second year of university, I was diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease. Now, to those of you who aren't aware what inflammatory bowel disease is, it's an autoimmune condition. Essentially, my immune system attacks my digestive tract. And the way that I found out that I had inflammatory bowel disease was essentially me getting to the point where I was so sick and losing blood that I got rushed to hospital. And this is not the typical way that someone is diagnosed with this type of condition. But I decided to suffer for days on end before seeking help. For some context, I had been going through a particularly stressful time between 18 and 19 as I was in my second year at university studying a chemistry degree. For those of you who aren't aware, prior to launching Team CBM as the online coaching business that it is to transform women to be undeniably confident in their body and minds. Prior to that, I was actually a nuclear scientist. We'll get into that. But for me to become a nuclear scientist, I went and studied my chemistry degree. And the reason why I went and studied was because the only thing that I felt I had to unlock a happier life was my brain. And fortunately, I absolutely love learning. I love science. And I believe truly that I did inherit a lot of that from my mother because she was so incredibly intelligent. Even so, my work ethic and desire to have a better life drove me to university. Whilst I was there, I started studying my chemistry degree at the University of Sheffield. And in my second year, after having had probably 18 months of starting to party, starting to drink alcohol way more than I had ever drunk before, unhealthy takeaways, being hungover. And then as I went into my second year of my studies where things got really freaking tough, like incredibly difficult and challenging and stressful. I didn't know how to deal with stress. At that stage, I also went through a breakup with my boyfriend at the time, who had been like my longest standing boyfriend, or it was like my longest relationship. And so it was a pretty tough thing to have to go through. And it was the first time I'd gone through anything like that. And all of this stress accumulated, and all of this inflammation from eating shit food, drinking alcohol, barely sleeping. I also used to smoke. All of these negative and horrible things that I used to do to my body, it just compounded. And my body basically just gave me a big, fuck you. It was like, I'm not dealing with this. And so literally on the day that I split with that ex-partner, later on in that same day, I had the most excruciating abdominal cramps. And it was really odd, to the point I was like, maybe I've eaten something weird, or like maybe this must be some kind of food poisoning. But then it got more intense and more frequent over the next couple of days. So I remember very vividly, on a Friday evening is when this started. By the Monday morning, I was being rushed to hospital because over the weekend, the cramps got worse, the pain got worse. I couldn't eat anything. I was so fatigued. And the most worrying thing was that I was passing blood. And every single time I went to the toilet, I was seeing blood. And this is something that is completely not normal. So if anyone is listening to this and that has happened, you need to speak to a doctor immediately. But I was just thinking, oh, maybe it'll go away. Maybe I just need to, get it out my system. Oh no, this got worse, to the point where on that Sunday night into the Monday morning, I genuinely fell asleep on the toilet because the time difference between those cramps was so bad. Went to the doctors, as in the general practitioner, and he said, right, we're calling you to basically be sent to hospital. We're going to have an ambulance take you to hospital because you need to get seen right away. And after having a colonoscopy, which is essentially a camera that looks at your digestive tract, I remember so clearly still that what was on that screen was just like my large intestine was so ulcered and inflamed and bleeding internally. It genuinely looked horrendous. And all of that inflammation that I could see and all of that damage that I could see internally that had happened was a real stark moment for me, because I thought, oh my goodness, I'm really sick. Like my body is really not in a healthy position now. So after they deciphered what it was, I had a nurse and a doctor nonchalantly come by my bedside and hand me a leaflet which said inflammatory bowel disease, or Crohn's disease more specifically. And she said, by the way, what we've found out is that this is a condition that you're going to have for life. Basically, your immune system, there's been a malfunction, but it attacks your digestive tract. And you'll go through periods in life where you feel like this, you'll go through periods in life where you feel better, but you might need to take medication for your whole life. Okay, so read the leaflet and let us know if you have any questions. And they just left. And I was there by myself, 19 years old, crying after a week in hospital and being in excruciating pain. And I was just like, wait, you're telling me that I've got this condition, which means that I'm going to have internal bleeding for the rest of my life and that I'm going to feel this amount of pain? And I just couldn't believe it. I simply couldn't believe it. I was just like, why is life like this? Why does this keep happening to me? And they put me on a course of corticosteroid medication. To anyone who has been on that type of medication, prednisolone, before, it is fantastic because it will cure the inflammation most of the time, but you get the most crazy side effects of insomnia. You literally can't sleep. You get the most horrendous mood swings. And as if I wasn't feeling unconfident enough in myself, you end up retaining so much water, particularly in your face, that my face looked like a balloon. And as soon as I felt better, which was maybe after a couple of weeks, and I got discharged and I went home, and I tried to process that I'd be stuck with this forever, all I could think about was going partying with my friends again and going on nights out, thinking that I'd missed out on all the fun. And I went straight back, once I felt better, to abusing my body again. And that continued for another month until I started to feel unwell again. Or at least I had the anxiety building up of whenever I had a slight stomach pain, I was like, oh my goodness, is it happening again? And on the 1st of January, 2017, I woke up after a night of drinking, partying with my friends, and I was really hungover. I looked at myself in the mirror as I got changed, and it was like a moment where time stopped. As I looked at myself, I could not believe what I had done to myself. I could not believe the reflection that was staring back at me, because how I felt and truly wanted to be as a person was the exact opposite of what was looking back at me in that mirror. The person that was staring back at me was fat, unhealthy. She had no discipline. She didn't actually put her priorities straight in life in terms of what mattered when it came to studies and treating herself with love and respect. She had these dreams, yet she didn't do anything about them or act in a way that would allow her to achieve those dreams. And I didn't even want myself, so why the hell would anyone else want me? It was one of these moments that I will forever be grateful for, because when I looked at myself in the mirror then, I thought, you cannot live the rest of your life like this. Because if you continue this way, what are you destined for? For your health to be even worse, to feel even more pain, to be sick, to just perpetually live in this miserable existence where you cover yourself in makeup and baggy t-shirts and black clothes because you don't truly like the vessel, the body that you're in. If you are a busy, career-driven woman and you know that your inability to lose the body fat that you want to lose is stopping you from living a confident, successful life, then hear me out. We have just launched our Fat Loss Accelerator program, which is made specifically for women who are constrained for time, yet they want to lose anywhere between 10 to 25 pounds of body weight within 90 days. Throughout this process, we're also going to teach you exactly what you need to know so that you can maintain this result forever. That it's the lifestyle changes and the habits that you need to implement for the rest of your life to finally become that confident and successful woman who excels in all areas of her life. So if you're interested in finding out more about our Fat Loss Accelerator program, then send me a message on Instagram. Send me the words Fat Loss Accelerator. My Instagram is millie@teamcbm. The link is in the description below, and I will get back to you with all the information that you need to know. Back to the episode. And that year, 2017, oh my goodness, my life really took a big turn. Immediately from that moment, I thought, right, this is a new chapter. Because everyone was talking about new year, new me. And I kind of said that, but I felt like a fraud because I wasn't doing anything to actually change who I was. In that moment, I thought, I'm actually going to take some form of action. And it started simply with YouTube, right? It started simply with YouTube, which is partly why I'm recording this podcast episode now. Because if it wasn't for YouTube and free content that helped me when I first started out, I would never, ever be here today. So to anyone listening to this that is doing their own self-research, kudos to you. I promise you, if you keep doing it, you keep doing it forever, you keep constantly learning and developing from other people who are however many steps ahead of you, you are destined to succeed. I have no doubt about it. You are destined to succeed as long as you listen and you implement. So I Googled something like, how can I be less fat? How can I lose weight? And funnily enough, what came up was a content creator who went by the name of Obese to beast. And he lost something like 300 pounds. And he just documented his story, how he went from being so crazy overweight to the point where he could have been on that TV show, like My 600 Pound Life, and to now he was a CrossFitter and helping people and coaching people. And so he taught me what a calorie was. He taught me how I could start tracking my food intake. He taught how you can start to train in the gym and build up your confidence. And so within that year, the first thing that I did was just learnt nutrition. I learned how to track calories. I started meal prepping my food. I reduced down the processed crap that I was eating. In that time, actually, I did go vegan. I did go and transition to a completely plant-based diet. It was not in the pursuit of losing body fat. It was actually in the pursuit of reducing as much inflammation as possible within my body, because many of my clients who have digestive conditions, as that's what we specialize in partially now, is digestive disorders. As many of those ladies will know, if you have a huge amount of inflammation in your body, doesn't matter whether it's a digestive condition or another autoimmune condition, it will make your symptoms worse. So I decided to go a very much so whole foods plant-based diet at that time because I had just come off the back of being incredibly, incredibly unwell. And I have never gone back to eating animal products just because ultimately I feel fantastic on a plant-based diet. So that's just something that is important for me to caveat during that time. I transitioned my principles in terms of how I ate, along with started tracking calories. For 6 months after I started that journey, I still didn't step foot in a gym. Don't get it twisted. I was terrified of the gym. I'd never done any exercise. But in that time, I went from around 175 pounds down to around 140 pounds. So I lost thereabouts 35 pounds just from tracking my calories and eating enough protein. Then after that, I started looking at, okay, well, my body, we're deflating in size, but I just look flat. In fact, I look skinny fat. You know, people that are skinny but have zero muscle, no definition, they look flabby. That's essentially how I looked. And it wasn't this toned, athletic physique that I really aspired to have. So again, I did my research on Instagram, on YouTube, and I found an incredible, inspiring woman called Meg Squats. She used to be a powerlifter, and then she transitioned more so over to just creating content and teaching women how to lift and be confident in the gym. And so best believe it, when the next sports fair at university rolled around, so this was going into my 3rd year of university, I went to the sports fair, I went to the Strength Sports Club stand, and I said, hi, this is terrifying, but I want to learn how to lift. And within 9 months, I was the treasurer on the committee of that Strength Sports Club, buying in all the new equipment, the barbells, the plates, handling all of that society's money because I loved it that much that I wanted to give back to them for everything they taught me. Funnily enough, to anyone who thinks that, the weight section is scary, there's big scary guys in there, the whole rugby team basically was on this Strength Sports Club, and all of these big burly guys were the ones that taught me how to deadlift, how to bench press, how to squat, how to get strong. And I have never felt so safe and comfortable with such patient human beings, no matter how big and scary they seemed. So trust me, when you think that people who have muscle or are strong are intimidating, they're actually more so protectors and people who truly care and respect those who want to improve their bodies. So we went on this big journey of losing 35 pounds from just nutrition to then starting to lift and starting to do it in a way that I would term it as properly, because I was lifting heavy, I was powerlifting. And that's how I really built up a good foundation of muscle and produced a toned physique. So in the end, I lost 50 pounds. My symptoms from my inflammatory bowel disease had pretty much started to completely diminish because I ultimately learned how to manage my stress better. I treated my body with more care and respect. I lost body fat, which was putting stress on my body. And things really did start to look up. I became that confident girl at university. I became way more efficient and disciplined with my studies. I actually became better in all other areas of my life because I was disciplined enough to prep my food and to go to the gym. And I learn all of these things that ultimately helps me to be a more productive individual. The only thing that was a very silly mistake is the fact that I stayed in a calorie deficit for way too long. I started yo-yo dieting. So I'd kind of be in my calorie deficit, I'd get to a position that I'm happy, I'd go back to my old habits. And then I'd pile the weight back on, then I'd go back to the calorie deficit. And after 18 months of that, I developed a pretty bad binge eating disorder to the point where I would intentionally go to the supermarket. I'd buy donuts, I'd buy, cakes or biscuits or whatever the hell it was. And I would go back and literally drown in it because it got to the point where I was so food focused that it drove me to just want to have these moments of complete food freedom. And what I thought at the time was food freedom, but actually it was food prison because I had put myself in a very silly situation where I had the all or nothing mindset. And I was either completely perfect, quote unquote perfect with nutrition, which now I know is not perfect because balanced nutrition is what is now considered perfect to me. But even so, I got to the point where these binge eating episodes started to happen 2 to 3 times per week. And ultimately over time, I started to gain weight. I was going backwards after all of this hard work that I'd put in, and I knew that I needed help. So I reached out to an eating disorder charity. I had therapy sessions. I learned through a 12-week process exactly what happens when you're striving to go from being incredibly food focused and body composition focused to actually learning how to eat in a balanced way and fuel yourself in a way that aligns with your health values. And that was one of the most important things that I'd learned, because now we integrate both knowing exactly how to eat in a balanced and sustainable way for life, along with protocols that allow for fat loss and a more toned and lean physique. This is what we've married together and is the cornerstone of the way that we coach our ladies now. So they'll never ever find themselves in a position where they feel like they're yo-yo dieting or binge eating or going through that process. So as much as it was a silly mistake that I made and I didn't know any better at the time because I didn't have a coach, I am so glad that I went through that, because since going through that myself and then having even further education on eating disorders and disordered eating, we've now got the perfect blend of knowing exactly how to improve mindful eating habits and just healing unhelpful relationships with food, but still being able to produce a physique result whilst actually learning healthy habits that you can maintain for your whole life. So there we had it. I'd gone through university the last couple of years and finally got myself to a position where I was in a body composition that I loved. I'd found this just incredible love for training and the gym, which I still find hilarious to this day because of how nervous I was to go to that sports fair and say, I want someone to teach me how to lift. I showed up at the gym at 6 a.m. for my lesson, so in terms of how to deadlift, because I didn't want anyone to see me doing it wrong. I was just like, I'm going to get to the gym before anyone's even awake. The same thing goes with a few times where I had genuine panic attacks and left the gym crying. If anyone thinks when I started out that I was just confident in the gym, you could not be any further away from what my true reality was. So after committing and just exposing myself to those environments consistently, the gym, learning from others, doing what needed to be done to get myself to a level where actually the gym felt like home. It was my environment. It was my second home. It was where I went to unwind. We'd got there and we'd healed my relationship with food, and I was in an amazing body composition. Unfortunately, after that time, I got hit again with another inflammatory bowel disease flare-up after going through another very personal, stressful time. And I lost so much muscle. I basically, across a period of 6 months, lost something like 30 to 40 pounds in body weight. And I was really sad because, yes, part of that might have been, body fat that I lost. I was tiny, I was fragile, but I also lost a lot of that muscle and strength that I had built. Then I had also moved to a new city to start this job as a nuclear scientist. And I didn't know anyone. And I'd just been really unwell. So at that point, I thought I need something stable in my life. I need someone who can support me through this, both mentally and physically. And I need to get my mojo back. I need to be that confident version of me because I'm starting a new job and I feel small. I don't know anything. I don't know where I am. Like, I just felt like a shell of myself. So I hired my first physique coach, Xander from JLX Coaching. If you're listening, I appreciate everything you ever did for me. He really allowed me to find my passion and excitement and learning for training. He made me enjoy exercise in a way that I never thought was feasible before because everything's still centered around how I looked. Whereas what Xander taught me was actually what my body could do. And every single gym session felt like a huge achievement because we largely just focused on what my body could do. Alongside that, we changed my nutrition so that I actually learned a little bit more in depth about what was required to truly sculpt my body in a way that I wanted to. And, after 6 months, not only had I regained so much strength, but I had really morphed in terms of my level of confidence. Like I strutted into the gym. I knew exactly what I was doing. I felt stronger than ever. And it really allowed me to find my feet and new friends in a city that was new to me. That's when lockdown happened. That's when the world stopped spinning. And it really was a time for me, which I won't hesitate to say, allowed me to unlock this future that I'm living in now. Because if it wasn't for the world stopping, I probably would have continued in a job that I hated. So for context, my job, it was centered around for nuclear power stations which don't operate anymore in the UK. These nuclear power stations used to create electricity, generate energy for the country. There was lots of radioactive waste that was produced. And we needed to find a way to get rid of this radioactive waste, which stays incredibly dangerous for hundreds and hundreds of years, way past the time when we're all dead. But they needed scientists to be able to do that. And so a lot of my job was the calculations, sat in an office with lots of professors, PhD students, calculating what we're going to do with this waste. Where are we going to put this waste? Go into nuclear power stations. However, because I worked with a generation that was much older and largely male-dominated, I didn't particularly feel like I was at home there. As you can tell, I'm a very bubbly person. I like connecting with people. I like empowering women. And I was in an environment that made women feel small. I was in an environment where I was not experienced because I was just starting out, and the only experienced people were the people that were 60 years old. It was also a place where I wasn't heard. When it was something that I wanted to suggest or somewhere where I felt my skills could be best used, I was dismissed. That is not something that I wanted for myself. I wanted to be able to have an impact on the world. And I genuinely felt like I was an old piece of furniture working at that company. Like, it was genuinely something where I knew that I could make a bigger difference to people's lives. So during lockdown, I started coaching people for free. I saw my friends and family getting fat and I was like, no, we can't do this. Like, don't just fall into the habits of drinking and just eating whatever because you can't go to work. Like, now you've got a real time to develop yourself. And so I started helping my family and friends completely for free with online coaching. And it was amazing. I had never felt so fulfilled and empowered and impassioned to do something like this ever before. And I kept investing in myself, my qualifications, a business mentor. And before I knew it, just as the world was about to open up again, I knew I had a do or die trying moment to build Team CBM to a position where that was going to be my full-time business. Amazingly, in 2021, that January, I decided that was going to be my next kind of year of all-out transformation. I was going to push my body to the position where I was going to get on a bodybuilding stage. After having been overweight, fat, out of shape my whole life, I was going to challenge myself mentally and physically to compete as a bikini athlete. And I was also going to challenge myself to build my business up to the position where we could help enough women that I could not only quit my job as a nuclear scientist and do something that was far more fulfilling, but then unlock my ability to truly become successful, not only in my body, not only in my health, but also within my career. And we did it. For 6 months, 6 months of prep, I did cardio every single day. I stuck to my nutrition with not a single ounce or calorie or food out of line with my plan. I still worked my 9 to 5, albeit it was remote, it was from home, but I still worked my 9 to 5 as a nuclear scientist and grew Team CBM, my coaching business, to the position where I was earning double my salary. And we were helping way more women than we ever would have imagined by that stage so early on, because I'd gathered all my knowledge that I'd done in terms of my own research, but also by that point I'd had a couple of coaches who were incredibly experienced and well versed, and I'd applied the different strategies that they had taught me and our philosophy in a way that was simply just consistently producing phenomenal results for our ladies. After I had finished competing, I decided it was time to go and explore the world a little bit, because I quit my job, I'd finished competing, and it was time to go and expand my horizons a little bit. Like, I was at this point living a dream that I never ever would have imagined. So I came to Dubai for a business event, and I absolutely fell in love with this city, because you cannot survive here unless you work hard. Especially, like, if you're not from the UAE, to make it out here without working hard is quite simply impossible. This place will swallow you up if you don't know how to work hard. And not only did it teach me how to work hard, but it taught me that ambitious people and a certain type of person who is well respected, you'll find that they hang out together, that they congregate together. Because why would anyone who is successful, ambitious, hardworking, disciplined, hang out with someone who's a loser? For what reason? Why would they? They wouldn't, because it's a way of disrespecting themselves. So here, believe it or not, but most people are absolutely incredible in their own specialist areas. And so the fitness industry out here, the experts out here, it really surprised me at how much access I had to these incredible brains. And I thought, I need to be here. So again, another risk. After quitting my job, after competing, I decided we're moving to Dubai. And over the last couple of years, so since I moved at the start of 2022, Team CBM has grown. Now it's not simply myself. Now it's myself and our incredible team of coaches and our incredible team of everyone who does all the different types of things, whether it's from content, whether it's from admin, social media. We've got the most phenomenal team of women, an all women and all female empowered team that are empowering and looking after our ladies who know that they are destined for more. They know that they have more potential, but they are just truly and really struggling to unlock that, because it's not a case, and I hear this all the time, it's not a case of the fact that you're not motivated enough. It's not a case of the fact that you don't have enough willpower. If I sat down 19-year-old Millie and I said to her, hey Mills, I know that you absolutely hate yourself right now. I know that you hate your life. I know that you're miserable. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this plan right here in front of you. And I promise you, if you do every single thing on this plan over the next 6 to 12 months, you are going to truly be confident in your body. You're going to be truly confident in your mind. And if, by the way, you stumble or you get stuck or there's anything that you need and you're not quite sure on how you should proceed moving forward, I'm going to be here for you. And I'm going to answer that for you. And I'm going to look after you and check up on you to make sure that you're doing okay. If I had that, it would have taken me a quarter of the time to get where I am now. And I don't only mean like in fitness. I mean, if I had a mentor earlier in business, if I had a mentor earlier in terms of how to make the right life decisions for what I truly want to do rather than what I think I should do to appear or look successful. If you have a mentor and you have someone who's guiding you through every single step of what you want to achieve, you are literally learning from every single mistake that they have ever made, and think of how much time you are saving. Time is the most precious resource that there is in this world, because with money, you can always make more money with more time. But guess what you can't get back? You can't get 3 years of yo-yo dieting and binge eating and chasing your tail trying to make progress, which is what I had. But for me, it was only 3 years. I'm sure there are plenty of ladies that are listening to this right now who know that it's not only been 3 years. Maybe it's been 10 years. Maybe it's been several decades where you've been wasting your time doing crappy fad diets or trying the newest quick fix to try and get to where you want to be, instead of hiring an expert who you can know exactly what you need to do from them, and you will literally learn from every mistake that they have ever made. So that is where we are at now. Not only am I here to tell you that it 100% is possible, and if I could go back to my younger self and say exactly that, I would, but I can't. So what else can I do to live a life that's full of purpose? Is I can do it for you. We can do it for you, because we have everything that you could ever possibly need to truly become the version of you that is confident in both your physique and your mind. Because being only mentally confident or being only physically confident does not unlock true success in all different domains of life. If you want to genuinely be successful in your career, in your relationships, in your health, you need your mind and your body to work in harmony. And learning mind and body discipline, along with the strategies for health, is ultimately what's going to get you there. So that's just a little bit of context from how I went from this life where I just thought that the world was against me, that I was going to be stuck, sick, broke, fat forever. And now life is very, very different, and there is never any going back. So if you would like our help, and if you're interested in having a little bit of support and clarity in terms of what you should be doing to ultimately unlock that undeniable mind and body confidence, then drop me a message on Instagram. Make sure that you just tell me what it is that you could use some help with. You know, there'll be no sales pitch, nothing along those lines. I just want to be able to help you, because that's what I said. I'm recording this for the younger version of me. And if you have enjoyed this episode, guys, please, as I say, drop a like, make sure that you have definitely rated the podcast. And I really, really appreciate you tuning in. There will be several exciting episodes coming up with some new guests and also some solo episodes. So make sure, if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, that you do as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Much love.